Back to SMITE. This particular episode, I want to talk about the meta currently, because I've noticed on the SMITE Reddit that a lot of people are wondering why certain gods are are hard to use in this meta, why other gods are really effective. A lot of new players are coming into the game, newer players, or players returning from a long absence and don't understand the meta. So I wanted to really address this because the meta has changed quite a bit drastically, especially given the both appearance and disappearance of soul surges, which actually has somewhat affected the meta slightly. So there's going to be a very brief forward on this specific match. The point here, and the reason why I'm playing Athena in this particular match, is because right now, this is a very early game meta, but despite the early game nature of the meta, mobility in the early game is very, very important. And this is because of, specifically, the Stygian Beacon. You see, the Stygian Beacon, besides obviously bringing the Titans out and unleashing the Titans, also gives the team that captures it a 3% boost to structure damage. Towers, phoenixes, right? This is the key. Because normally, when you are looking to eliminate a structure, again, towers or phoenixes, you want auto-attacking, right? The problem is that auto-attackers tend to come more into their own in the late game. You see, ability-based gods have both the flat damage of the abilities plus additional bonus damage based on their power, right? Usually this power boost ranges from 40 to 60%. Obviously there are a bunch of abilities that accept this, right, that are exceptions, but generally speaking you can expect about 50%, give or take 10%. Auto attackers don't have that. They have a flat auto attack damage, and in order to really deal a lot of damage as an auto attacker, you need to boost your power, because 100% of power goes into the auto attack, plus you need attack speed. But every level, you get to put a point into an ability, increasing its flat damage. Every level you get increases your basic attack damage or your auto attack damage a little bit, and your attack speed a little bit. But the bulk of your enhancements to auto attacks are going to come from items, which are slower to gain than levels, typically speaking. Obviously, there are exceptions, but you can, get experience as you're out in the field, and then when you're going back or you're dead, you're not getting gold or experience. Generally speaking, auto attackers perform better late game, and ability-based gods perform better early game. There are exceptions. Obviously, Anubis is actually one of these exceptions. He does, well, I can't quite say that. Marty, I think, is actually a better example of this. Marty has really strong ability damage. He actually hits pretty hard with his abilities. So even as an auto-attacking hunter on paper, he still performs unusually well in the early game, better than Jing Wei. But Jing Wei will be stronger than Marty, typically speaking, in the late game. Another great example of a hunter that does really well in the early game, despite the usual auto-attacking nature of hunters, is Neith. Really high ability damage, also has the benefit of replacing the need for mobility with a global ult that can still allow her to contribute. I talked about mobility earlier, but really what I'm talking about is the ability to contribute to fights you're not currently in. I can do this with Athena with her ult. I can just be there in a fight, right? Awilish gets to go on Suku, or Sulu, I can't quite remember the cat's name, and blitz from one side of the field to the other faster than Kali can, right? Mobility is very important because you need to be able to get to the Stygian Beacon, grab that, get another 3% boost on your structure damage, which now that the Stygian Beacon continuously respawns, prior to the most recent update, it only spawned 3 times. And then the Titans would be unleashed, and that would be it. There would be no more Stygian Beacons. But now, the Stygian Beacon keeps refreshing, and I think that's to help prevent stalemates. I'll talk about that in its own video at some point. But the point here is that it keeps respawning, so you can continuously stack up 3% each time you capture that. This removes a lot of the need for auto attackers on the tower basis there. And again, we're looking at a strong need to have a more dominant early game so you can go and grab that Stygian beacon faster. So you can get online and maybe take a tower and be able to leave your lane earlier, right? Currently, the meta favors early game power. Ixchel, with her first ability qualifying as 2 abilities, is unusually powerful in the early game. Same thing with Hell. The ability to flip between the 2 versions of Hell and use an ability right afterwards, very powerful in the early game, although for Hell, she doesn't really truly come online until level 3 at minimum. Ixchel from level 1 is going to start dealing heavy amounts of damage from the get-go, especially since Hell has fewer abilities that do damage, right? Her first ability does damage both ways, but it's a skill shot. Her third ability only deals damage in the dark form, and her second ability doesn't deal damage at all. So Hell, despite the fact that she comes online from level 3 onwards, she doesn't have a whole lot of hard-hitting abilities. She's only technically got 3, despite having, in theory, 6 abilities. Only half of her abilities actually do damage. So damage-wise, her ability to contribute damage early game isn't that much greater than other mages, but Ixchel technically has 4 abilities, because her first one is technically qualifying as 2, plus an actual ult, which Hell doesn't have. Hell doesn't have an ult. You're going to see this reflected in this matchup. You're going to see Ixchel start to do very well in the early game. She's going to fall off slightly towards the late game. We'll talk about that when we get to it. Another thing that I want to mention is that you can go too extreme on emphasizing the early game. The Sylvanas, the enemy Sylvanas, does this. He builds in a way that works really well in the early game, but he totally sacrifices his late game potential to do so, and that's more extreme than the meta can sustain. You still need to keep the late game in mind. It's not like these Conquest games are ending in like 20 minutes, right? That isn't happening. You still have a late game, and it's still important. It's just that the early game gods are playing better at this current point with the meta because they're rewarded more thanks to the Stygian beacon. There's less of a need for auto attackers at this point in time. The sole exception being hunters, but even then, the better hunters right now in the current meta have really strong ability damage or the ability to contribute to fights that they don't belong in. Jingwei, even though she is very heavily auto attack based and doesn't perform particularly well in the early game compared to Marty, does have her passive, which allows her to fly about a third of the way up the field and gives her a lot of mobility that Marty lacks. And you're going to see Jingwei use this for some pretty effective counter moves later on in the game. But I really wanted this brief forward here to sort of set this up, because this is a very interesting and complicated match that really bears conversation about, and I'm going to focus a lot on the meta and people's responses to things and why or why not that particular choice matters or is good. We're going to get pretty into the weeds here. So we're going to go on ahead and skip to where we're actually doing things. Now, notice, if we can just, there we go. Notice I've got my passive going here. I'm all ready to throw the spear. This will allow me to join Jingwei slightly faster. It's not the biggest deal. A couple of other Guardians can do this. Sylvanas, for instance, actually is a good example. But, here we go. Pull them, grab these. And we're able to do a pretty good job clearing these really nicely. I did forget my recipe, but it's not that big of a deal. At least not for, the first round. Because we don't get any benefits from it until it's fully evolved anyways. So we clear this nice and quick as well. This goes pretty well. I probably should have used my shield wall to make that a little faster, but we still beat them in terms of time. Go for, of course, the archers first. They do more damage. Completely whiff my spear because the Sylvanas very nicely dodged that. Grab taunt first, right? Pull them in. Get the Jingwei properly goes for the Marty while I'm distracting the Minion and Sylvanas. Very good move. She does a lot of great poke to him. And she has to be this aggressive because she, I'm assuming, understands that Marty's going to have the better early game than she is. Marty at this point is level 2, so he's going to have the good early game online at this point. So this is just going to be, I forgot to throw my spear there. But she's got to know, right, that she's going to have to really apply a lot of pressure here. There goes the Hell, of course. Again, Ixchel has a slightly stronger early game than Hell. Not by much, but it's noticeable. Hell has a rough time this match, but she does what she needs to. We'll talk about her shift, her contributory shift, and how it's the correct choice later on. It's a really aware play that the Hell makes later on. But, we're just farming at this point. I'm trying to, get some poke on Sylvanas. He's trying to just clear the wave. Trying to clear the wave because he knows right now in a straight fight they're going to win this a little bit more. Marty has better early game damage than Jingwei does at this point. Sylvanas knows all this. Now, I'm confused here, and I'm still confused to this day. I don't know where Sylvanas went, okay? I'm not going anywhere, really. I'm trying to stick near Jingwei because I don't know where he's gone. I'm not using my abilities here, you'll notice, because I don't know where Sylvanas is gone. I want to save them up. And as long as Sylvanas isn't in lane, I don't need to use the abilities in the first place, right? So we go over here, and I'm not entirely sure where Sylvanas has ever gone. We start working on this. I'm a little concerned that it's so close to their side. Jingwei obviously is as well because she starts pulling it back. We do get it, which is good. And then I initiate here. I probably should not have, in retrospect, because again, that Marty is going to be bringing to bear a little bit more early game damage. You can actually see me get just absolutely smacked right there. And that was a bad initiation on my part. I should have respected the Marty's early game strength and left that earlier, but I didn't. But, I'm coming back in. I'm trying to save the Jingwei. What I was kind of expecting was for me to sacrifice myself to kill Marty, but that didn't actually happen. I don't know how Jingwei survived that, but, here we go. Boom. And then we get... actually, you can see the Archer minion kill him, and then Jingwei picks up the Marty. Now, this is really important. This is a really big win for us, because this is going to give Jingwei the opportunity she needs to really capitalize and contest Marty a little bit better. This is... considering that also Ixchel is winning the mid lane, this is also going to give us a little bit more leeway if we get ganked as well, because we're going to be a little stronger than average, so we're going to have that in our favor, right? So we do have all of these benefits. Now I'm looking at this point to go for the purple buff, right? I hit level 5, so I'm looking to get the purple buff, and I'm looking to back afterwards. That's what I want to do, right? Grab this for extra golden experience. Drop this for Jingwei. There's Sylvanas. There's Marty. Not too unusual for Sylvanas to come back. He's not level 5 yet. That's pretty normal, right? That's totally fine. What I was expecting, I decide, you know what? We're going to grab this while we're here, because they're not paying attention in left lane there. So here we are. Grab the buff, grab some more golden experience, maintain our lead. Let Jingwei have that because she needs that a little bit more. Minions. We lose a couple of minions there. That's fine. We still got the buff, so that's, that works out just fine. I'm looking to back, and then I'm looking to, of course, I get poked out, but I'm looking to back, and then a Wheelish calls attack left lane. So I'm like, alright, I don't like this very much, but Jingwei and I both stick around despite the fact that Jingwei has no mana and I don't have that much health. And I'm just trying not to die at this point. But I'm hoping that we can get Sylvanas. I'm tempted to ult a Wheelish, but I decide against it because it's not really going to get anything done, right? She doesn't have any crowd control. She can't necessarily lock in on them or anything. And then pay attention to the right lane here, right? I'm looking to back here, and if you look over here, you'll see Ixchel for a brief second. You can see, and that's what I react to. I'm out of here, right? I want to go, and then we're out of here. And this is exactly what I was talking about earlier. The Ixchel was very far ahead. I'm not actually surprised that she showed up at all. Right, so Hell comes over, which is the correct move. She really should be. I warn her that Ixchel is coming back. I almost get killed by Marty here because I'm trying to keep the minions from going under tower. Kali blinks in, almost gets me killed. I go back, and then Ixchel is right here, and she's obviously going to kill me if I try to leave. So, between all of these abilities, here comes Kali, right? I'm trying to blink out of there. I really should have taunted Kali under the tower first, to be honest. I still would have died either way, but I tried the blink out, and that didn't obviously work. Just a huge, huge rotation there. And that's because they're all trying to get Marty up a little bit more. He's a little bit behind. Ixchel, obviously, again, is ahead in mid, so she has the opportunity, the ability to quite safely rotate over, right? Grab my recipe, finally. And I was going to ult over there, but of course no one's over there. And I'm heading left because I want to try to save this tower. I'm going to be way too late. Way too late. You can see Marty working on it. Right? And here I come. And then there's Sylvanas, and they're just going to clean that up. And I can see that right there, right? So I take that out. Here comes Jingwei, so I decide, well, you know, the purple buff is up. I'm going to take this, or start this, so that way they don't take it away from Jingwei. Give her, you know, something to help fight against Marty. Marty's the same level as her after that, which is unsurprising. They wiped us and left. They took the tower. That's not really a big surprise. But I'm going to rotate to mid, because at this particular point, Hell really needs to catch up to Ixchel, and she's not going to be able to do that alone, right? There's just no way. So I start working on this, while Hell goes to pick up her damage buff. That's the only reason I started this when I did. Obviously, I'm not doing enough damage here, so I pull them into the tower. I didn't want to originally pull them into the tower, because quite honestly, I wanted to try to get the gold. I'm going to get less gold out of this as a result, but it's just, in terms of time, I needed to be there just in case Awelish needed help. I actually ult her because I'm concerned that Ixchel is going to kill her, because Ixchel, of course, is fairly fed at this point. Hell picks that up, which is hugely important, right? And there's Sylvanas. Right, so I'm just keeping an eye on him. I just want to make sure, you know, I know what he's doing. He's doing whatever, right? He's just trying to defend the tower, which is fine. There's Kali, not surprised. And then, this is my first indication that there's something going on here. That was a lot of damage out of Sylvanas' ult. I'm trying to figure out, this is what I'm actually standing here for. I'm like, what's going on here? That hit really hard. Did they buff Sylvanas' ult when I wasn't paying attention? Turns out he's building damage, alright? That's what he's doing. He's got Tainted Steel, and he's working on Rod of Tahuti at this point in time. Right? And I'm looking at this damage, and I'm like, what the heck is this? So, I go back, and I'm trying to... I'm actually, at this point, still thinking that it's possibly a buff from the most recent update. That's what I'm thinking. So, I make an interesting, weird little mistake here. I was originally going to wait for the Gem of Fate, but then I decide, you know what? Should I sell my mystical earring? No, I shouldn't sell that. But now I'm, you know, really close to having the Gem of Fate anyways, so I just wait for it. I wound up waiting for it. I wasn't originally going to, but it was like, at this point, why wouldn't I? I probably should not have, but here we are. Now, Awelish does a decent job protecting the tower as best she can. She is going to be looking to initiate here, I think, because they're both low, so I initiate. She was kind of looking aggressive there. We do pick up the Ixchel. I'm kind of worried about where Kali is, because she disappeared. She actually is right there, so that's fine. But we do pick up the Ixchel, which is really important. It's going to give Hell some time to get a level or two, catch up a little bit, right? Then I see Kali here. I completely whiff, but my main goal of getting her to run anyways is fine. And then Sylvanas kills Jingwei, and this... Hold on, go back for a second there. That was where I checked... Alright. I thought for a second my sound turned off. So, I want to pause on the scoreboard because I want you to see their builds. Because this is where I realize, oh, Sylvanas is building damage. Now, he has Tainted Steel for protections, obviously, but you're going to see in the late game for Sylvanas here, yes, he's doing very well in the early game. Obviously, he's 3-1. He's, you know, doing very well for himself, right? But notice he's only got about 180 more gold than me, despite having 2 more kills than I do and having the same number of deaths, alright? He's not significantly getting more gold than I am, alright? Another interesting factor is later on in the game, because he is building damage, this isn't a one-off Rod of Tahuti here, he continues building damage, right? Plus, also notice, the solo lane Anubis also not building protections. No one on their team is building dedicated protections, which means they're going to be incredibly squishy, and they're also going to be really high damage. Now, this is interesting to me because this basically means I can initiate on anyone. If you don't know, or you don't play support very often, it's generally not a good idea as a support to initiate on the enemy support, which in this case is Sylvanas. But considering he's building damage, and he continues to do so because I check up on this throughout the match, he becomes a viable target. I can initiate on him because he's going to die very nearly as quickly as the people he's supposed to be protecting. And once we get over this the speed bump of having a really rough early game, because we're behind right now, obviously 7-10. Hell is doing really not great. She's having a really hard time here. Obviously, you can see it 1-7. XChell is doing really well at 5-2. She's 2 levels ahead. We have this really rough early game, and our transition into the mid game is rough. We have a hard time. We don't group up as quickly as we should. But once we start grouping up, because they don't have any defense, they have no front line at all, they crumble quick. You're going to see this, and this is something I want to emphasize in this match. It is very important that people understand their roles and at least make the effort to fill that role, to do their job. It's not an accident that most solo laners build protections. It's not an accident that supports build really tanky a lot of the time. There is a reason, and it is very important. Alright, and you're going to see the enemy team crumble explicitly because of this. They are, right now, focusing too heavily on the early game. I have been talking about how it's an early game meta, which is true, but too much emphasis on the early game is going to throw away the late game. It doesn't matter how good your early game is if you can't clinch the late game. Okay? And that's a point I want to make here. So, back we go. You know, we're just clearing these out for the golden experience. She needs it, right? She gets that. Great. Work on this one. No idea where XChell is. I actually should have called missing here. This is actually an oversight on my part. Now, clearly my audio has mildly desynced. I'm not sure why. This is a recording software thing. It just went slightly off on the audio here. It's a mild inconvenience. I apologize, but there's really nothing I can do about that. It's just the way it recorded. Anyways, so it's also of interest to note that even though the Anubis himself has not been at least fighting effectively, he's been laning very effectively, right? You can see that Pele has lost her first tower, but I come over here because Marty is fighting with Jingwei, and I'd really like to push down the Marty. I know that Sylvanas has been spending a lot of time in left, so while he isn't here, it's worth, slapping down Marty a little bit here. I completely whiffed that because I keep forgetting that passes over there. That's obviously Sylvanas blinking, so I turn around, but it's Kali blinking in, right? I, for some reason, thought that Sylvanas had blink at this point, but it doesn't really make a difference. I knew somebody had blinked in, but Kali has no mana, so I know that she's not going to be able to use her ult, so this is a great kill for Jingwei. Here's Sylvanas, right? And he's going to be able to kill the Jingwei because obviously we know he's building damage at this point. But I see my entire team coming in, and he must have a ward down because he also clearly knew they were coming. He grabbed the purple buff just to deny it, but he kills Awelish. But, at this point, he's really not likely to get away. Anubis is unlikely to be able to rotate over, although, to be fair, Pele is right here, so he could. So it's just something to kind of keep an eye on. Get rid of Sylvanas there. And back I go. And I mention right here, because Jingwei mentions that it's power Sylvanas, and I point out that this is going to present them with problems later, and I am 100% correct. You'll see this later on. So, everyone's, trying to farm at this point, and farming and everything. I make some terrible spelling right there. I also point out quite accurately as well that he's taking Marty's experience. Now, at this particular point, Marty is behind Jingwei 2 levels because obviously we had a great fight. Jingwei got 2 kills. But even before then, Marty was the same level as Jingwei despite having a higher score, despite having access to more golden experience. And that's because Sylvanas was in his lane so long. This is why he should have been in mid lane earlier. I mentioned that earlier. He's spending too much time in left, right? At this point, I'm just trying to get myself out of here and hell out of here. Because, of course, Anubis is over here, and he's hitting pretty hard. I am able to get out, and I have my ult, so I'm not really concerned about going back, because I can just go to the fountain, heal up really quick, and then ult back in, so I'm not really that concerned about it. I'm trying to decide if I want to use a glyph on my Pridwin, but I decide not to. And I go to try to save Jingwei, grab my shield right before I go. Now, I'm not sure if Sylvanas abandoned his attempt at killing Jingwei because I was ulting her, or what. I don't know, but I'm looking for this Stygian beacon here, right? Because here we are. Jingwei is kind of fooling around with the Sylvanas a little bit here. I'm kind of expecting her to be able to get away, but she does not. which is unfortunate, but we do get the Stygian beacons. That's a really great help. And we know Sylvanas is here, so we can probably lock him down, right? Just grab him. And I know that this is going to be, you know, a fine initiation attempt because, again, he's got very little protections. So he's very easy to kill. And we all know this, right? This is where you start to see the Sylvanas fall apart. Even this early, you can start to see the Sylvanas not really being able to contribute in the way his team needs. It's not necessarily that the Sylvanas plays badly or that the Sylvanas is getting kills. The problem is that he is getting kills. He's a support. He should not be trying to get kills. That is not his job. He's abandoning his ability to defend his team. I was originally going to go around and try to kill Marty, by the way, right here, but I decided against it. I decided saving my allies is more important. I was about to pull a Sylvanas without the damage of items. But anyways, he's throwing away his role to try to get kills. And this is, you can start to see already that this is going to hurt him and his team in the long run. He's already dying very quickly, right? So I can't save anyone here because the entire enemy team is over here. I try my best to save Jingwei, and I do, but I sacrifice myself in the process, but that's fine. I was able to save Jingwei, which is good at the very least, because we are going to need her. Pele, this is where we start to, you know, we really need to group up, and Pele isn't over here. She's not joining the team. Anubis has been grouping up, and that's why we're losing these team fights, is because Anubis is here grouping, and Pele is not. It's why we're losing these fights. We would be able to turn these around more effectively if Pele was grouping up earlier. You can actually see, you know, on the right there, where she is just not grouping up. She's going right back to the right lane. She doesn't need to be in right lane right now. The farming there is very risky because Sylvanas is there. The wave is halfway up. I take that speed buff because I know that Wheelish has the other one over here. You know, she's just farming around. Now she's, you know, in the jungle. She gets scared off by Sylvanas, which is fair enough considering he's damaged Sylvanas. That actually makes some sense. You see a Wheelish poking around with the Ixchel, and I know that Sylvanas is kicking around, so I'm trying to keep an eye on that, right? I know he's somewhere in right, because last time I saw him, he was clearing the totem. Grab some golden experience off those minions. There's Sylvanas. A Wheelish dies to Ixchel. I'm looking to try to save Hell at this point, because Hell is, of course, a bit behind. I also know that she, Kali at least, has no mana, right? So she dies to Hell, which is good. It gets Hell some more golden experience. And then we get overwhelmed, partially because we were really, again, not together. That's fine for Jingwei because Marty wasn't there, but Pele was... we were just too scattered, actually, all of us, at the same time. We were all pretty scattered. I point out we need to group up because that's our overwhelming problem right now, is that we are not grouping up. Even when we were roughly in the same area, we were not together. We get some, you know, yeses there, which is good. I have my ult, so I'm coming up in 5 seconds. I know I'm going to be able to get here to help her out. And I say ultimate is ready. Credit to Pele, she went back in. Alright. She went back in, which is great. I complete something. And, you know, we've got these people really low, and we've got them, you know, on the ropes. Ixchel is healing up the Anubis, but it's not enough. Right, I slow him down with Horrific Curse. And then lock down the... I actually wound up accidentally killing the Anubis. And, you know, at this point I'm going to die to Sylvanas, but that's fine, because at the very least I've done my job. Ixchel's died, Anubis has died, I died, so that's 2 for 1 right there. And then they're going to be able to pick up somebody else, theoretically speaking, although the Kali is quite spooky. Grab Gladiator's Shield to splash in a little bit of damage. Right, it is still important for Guardians to be able to do something, and Gladiator's Shield is going to be all the damage I'll need, which you'll see throughout the match, while maintaining my defensive attributes, which is, of course, the key here. Jingwei is farming up left. This is fine because, again, Marty wasn't there. Marty is still kicking around and left, so Jingwei being there is fine because of this. If Marty were to rotate, she would need to follow him. She could probably do so faster if she went back to Fountain and then flew to us. But it's fine that she's in left because Marty is also in left. So as long as they can keep each other over there, that's fine. We are, however... you know, at this point, I'm just looking for farm. But I was kind of wondering if we could get a gank on Marty. Because I know he's alone. I know he's kind of halfway up there, right? So it is an interesting potential there, right? Checking the build, you can see Sylvanas has Chronos Pendant, he's building full damage. You can see Anubis has Chronos Pendant, he's building full damage. There are no protections on the enemy team outside of that single Tainted Steel. Right, I see Jingwei at this point fighting the Kali, I think that is, yeah, that's the Kali, in left, and I'm going to grab the Sijin Beacon. I probably should have rotated to that, right? They both die. Well, Awilish dies. The Jingwei is still fighting. I grab the Stygian Beacon, because this is my plan. I figured I would have the time to grab the Stygian Beacon and then ult to somebody. I probably should have just gone earlier. I shouldn't have waited for the Stygian Beacon. But, you know, I'm trying to get the Jingwei out through any means I can. I grab the Kali with Taunt, and she switches focus to me, which is the correct move. I use Horrific Curse, right? And then I'm going to try to get out, because Jingwei's got out, and I think that, well, I thought Jingwei got out. She's actually going to about to get killed by Sylvanas, I think. Hell dies trying to save Jingwei. I die here. Somebody puts up a surrender vote, which we don't need. I already know that we're going to be able to win this in the late game. Because, again, they don't have any protections. So I'm not too concerned about this at this particular point in time. It's a bit grim, but from this point forward, we really start to group up, right? We start to turn this around from here on forward. And, yeah, as Awilish says, we group, we win, which is absolutely true. Again, she points out that they have no tank, which is, again, very true. Although I was confused because I thought she was saying that I was not doing my job, which I have been doing, except for that last fight, which I confess I should have been there earlier, right? I should have been in that fight earlier. She clarifies because she must notice that I'm confused. They somehow steal the Pyro, which I still don't know how they managed to do, but it was absolutely great. Right, I'm trying to save Hell at this point. I blink in, and I'm looking to, you know, get people killed. There goes the Anubis. And I'm trying to pursue the Ixchel. Kudos to the Hell for picking that up and realizing that I'm going for this Ixchel. She does a great job following up on this. Absolutely great move. Jingwei's there. She picks that up. Sylvanas and Marty are in left. They really shouldn't be, especially the Sylvanas. The Marty being in left lane isn't too unusual. He probably should have grouped up, but considering Jingwei from Fountain can outpace him, I'm not surprised. By the way, great play by the Kali there, blinking. Because I was prepared. I just want to talk about this play really quick because I was really aware. Right, I'm waiting for the jump by the Kali, which is why I'm charging this up. But she predicts that and she blinks instead, it was just a great move by the Kali. But anyways, the Marty being in the left lane, that's fine. He's not going to catch up with Jingwei, but Sylvanas should have been there earlier. Right, we had a 4v3 in that situation where we killed the Ixchel, the Anubis, and we slapped down the Kali. Yeah, that was a 3v4 situation. Sylvanas absolutely should have been there, especially if they were going to be making a Pyromancer move, which they were, and they have no real front line. He still should have been there, right? So that was a mistake on the Sylvanas' part very specifically. Yeah, they take the left tower, but at this particular point, a single tower isn't a huge deal, right? It's nice to have, but we got Pyromancer out of that. So it's really not, it was not worth it. The tower was not worth 2 deaths on your team and the Pyromancer. So, again, we're looking to farm here because obviously Sylvanas is way ahead of me because he's got kills, right? He's got more kills than me because he's building damage, obviously. So I'm just looking for some experience at this point. The Jingwei is trying to get us to take some kind of thing, but we have a fight going on here because the enemy team is aggroing. But we're finally, for the first time, truly grouped up. All 5 of us are here. So Jingwei is like, let's attack, let's go in. And I'm like, alright, say less. So we wipe out Kali, right? We're looking at a really low HP Ixchel, who I'm going to just sweep in here, just take care of her, just more out of desperation to make sure nobody else died trying to get her. Set up for the Anubis. I already know that Marty has no ult, so he's going to die. Right, there's just no way he makes it out of here. I have my taunt. Boom. There it is. He beats out, which is fine. Hell just absolutely slaps that poor guy. And then they're all going in, and they want to take tower. I don't want to take tower, excuse me. We are all here, so it's like, why not, right? He ults, which is fine. But I also know he's going to die real quick. Look at him die. Look at him go down. Great ult by Awilish. I die for it, but that's fine. That is totally fine. Because that is a team wipe and almost a Phoenix. They are going to have to back up a little bit on that. I grab Heroism because it's OP. Right? They almost get it. I think actually Jingwei sacrifices herself to get it, or she comes very close. She comes very close. She doesn't sacrifice herself for that. She just comes very, very close. And I'm trying to figure out what I want to build here, but given that Sylvanas is building damage, I decide what I'm going to do is mix up my build a little bit here and go for the Heartward Amulet. And I actually wind up going for the Amulet of the Stronghold, selling Oni Hunter's Garb, and going for more physical protections in the form of Midgardian Mail to help with the auto-attacking damage from Kali and Sylvanas and Marty. And that's what I wind up doing, just as a fun fact. But again, Sylvanas, he's only got, and this is worth talking about really quick. I didn't remember what Party Punch did because I'm still getting used to what the recipes do at endpoint. But you'll notice he only has one protection item here. He only has Genji's Guard, right? He has no other protections here. And he is going to start dropping like a fly. I'm going to be able to exploit this. Anubis also, no protections, right? I'm going to be able to use this later on. You can see in the bottom right here of, because I'm obviously watching this off my computer, you can see there's only 13 minutes left in this match. Things start going downhill for them very rapidly. We've almost caught up in terms of kills. We've almost caught up in terms of experience. We have a lot going for us at this particular point in time. Here come the Titans, right? So we all know that a fight is coming up. And this is going to be a pretty important fight for both teams. They take the Oni Fury, which is pretty big deal, right? Kali tries to grab the Hell, but I'm able to distract her off. They're going really hard on the Hell, who unfortunately dies. And this is they're clearly making their move, right? I'm unable to ult out. I don't know why I said able. And I'm looking at this point to grab my Heartward Amulet, my Amulet of the Stronghold, and they're looking to be pushing down one of the Titans here, right? But they're they're in the left lane. Even though that's not the lane the Titans go down, because that's just where we were at the time. They were going for the Oni Hunter, the Oni Fury. They probably had a ward down in that area, and that's how they knew Hell and I were there. And we were a little out of position there, although we didn't know they were at the Oni Fury. Right? The enemy team tries to go for this mid tower. They do take it, but they lose quite a lot here because Marty dies. You can see Ixchel, she dies right here. Boom. So that's 2 for 2 now. They took the tower, but they really didn't get much else out of this, right? So I ult in on a Wheelish because I want to contribute here to this mess that's going on that might go on in middle. They're going for the Pyromancer, except we interrupt it, obviously. And you can see the Anubis, again, the Sylvanas being very easy to damage here. I'm able to pretty effectively fend them off because I have protections. The Anubis does not have enough penetration. The Sylvanas has not enough penetration, despite the fact that he's dealing damage. Right, Jingwei clears out the Sylvanas. Unfortunately, dies right afterwards. But Pele is right here. She's got everything she needs to take out this boom Kali, who just stands in my shield wall for 12 years. And I'm looking to take something. Right, I'm looking to take the Pyromancer. I want to take the Titan actually, because originally I was thinking about the Pyromancer. But I realized I'd forgotten that the Titans were kicking around, and at the very least, I want to take out the Titans, right? Because I still forget the Titans exist sometimes. So we kill that Titan. Obviously, our Titan is going to survive, so it's not even worth following that, because you can see from its health, it's not going to last anything more than 2 seconds. Get my Amulet of the Stronghold, sell the Oni Hunter's Garb, and grab some more physical protections. And you can see my protections are doing very well for themselves right now. I've got over 200 of each, which is a great place to be at. So I'm in pretty good shape right here. I'm about to finish stacking my cloak, my prophetic cloak, which is great. I don't know why Hell was following the Titan. She is out of position. I wind up ulting to her. More to keep Marty off of her. The Pele is looking for some kind of poke. Jingwei is in left for some unholy reason. She really shouldn't be. But, Ixchel has no escape, so I go on ahead and initiate on her because Hell is right behind me. We are able to pick her off pretty quick, which is really great. There she goes, right? You can see Jingwei, and this is what I talked about earlier. Even though Jingwei was in left, all she has to do is go back to the fountain and then fly back out of the fountain towards us, and she catches up pretty quick. She's on her way. We're about to group up, and we've just killed Ixchel, so we actually have a great opportunity to turn this around. And we only have this opportunity because they really goofed that mid lane tower take. If they'd won that tower take, they probably would have been in a much stronger position, but they threw that away. They threw away the Pyromancer. And I see this Anubis right here going for it. And we're all grouped up, they're down a person, and they're cut off, right? The Kali and the Anubis came in from the middle, which they shouldn't have done, and cut themselves off from their own allies. Obviously, the Hell dies, but we are able to take out the Kali. We're about to take out the Marty, and the Sylvanas is not going to be a threat because, again, he's going to die very quickly. Here he is, right? And there he goes, right? I just used my taunt. There he goes. And then we can take this tower, in theory. Now, the X-Shell has come back up, so there is a bit of a risk here on this particular one, right? I'm probably going to die here. But I'm out. I call retreat because I have my ult, so I can ult back to these two. That's not a real big problem. I just wanted them to retreat temporarily so I would have the time to go back to the fountain, heal up a little bit, and grab my last protection item. And, you know, credit to the Jingwei. She stuck around. Pele comes back in. She was going to leave, but she comes back in. We kill Ixchel. We're able to take the tower because obviously I'm at, you know, I just came back at full health. This is an easy take. The Anubis tries to teleport to that, but that's fine. I want to get out of here because I don't have the health, we don't have the health, and they're all coming back up. Awilish calls attacking the fire giant, so I'm like, you know what? Let's go for it. I don't think that they're going to be coming after us at this point. I believe you can actually see me. Yeah, I pinged the Pyromancer because I want to make sure that we're going for the Pyromancer, which I didn't mention in this dialogue originally because I was really in the moment, but yeah, the regular fire giant we wouldn't have killed, right? That's obviously impossible. We didn't have the health, we didn't have the damage at this point. But the Pyromancer is an easy take, right? So what I want to do right now is, of course, again, farm, because at this point I'm really wanting gold for the upgrade of my relics at this point. It's the only thing I really need to buy at this particular point in time is just my relic upgrades, which are going to be really helpful at keeping my teammates alive, you know, increase my blink, decrease my cooldowns on these, so. But then, Hell just heals me, so I'm like, you know, I'm just going to stick around. So we stick around and we heal up. And more because I don't want them taking the fire giant. They know that we've taken the Pyromancer, right? The fire giant's still up, the Gold Fury is still up, and it's the Gold Fury still being up that I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe I should head to the left. But here is Marty, so Marty's by himself, basically. Anubis is right here, but Anubis has very little mobility. They're all starting to come up now, though, but it's too late because Marty is already death. Jingwei picks him up, and this, I want you to pay attention. I am able to go for and initiate on the Sylvanas because I know he hasn't got protections. I normally would not have been able to do that, but because he's not building protections, that's initiation. Same thing on the Anubis. Normally, I wouldn't be able to go in there and help deal that much damage to Anubis, but he has no protections, right? I wanted to go back and try to ult back into the fight, but everyone just dove into the X-Gel, unfortunately, so I really didn't have that opportunity. Pele takes care of the Kali, at the very least. We overall won that fight, mostly because, again, that's the clearest example in this match of how important it is for you to be able to do your job. Anubis had no protections, Sylvanas had no protections, they dropped like stones. If they had been more durable, I wouldn't have been able to initiate on the Sylvanas. I wouldn't have been able to sustain as long against the Anubis because he would have been having his combination of damage and protections. That's why they lost that fight. Their lack of protections is the sole reason they lost that fight. They started a little out of position. Marty was too far up, obviously, and Sylvanas was too far back, but Sylvanas was that far back because he couldn't sustain the damage, right? I'm, by the way, just throwing my bomb down on this tower just so I have that, you know, done. I immediately ult to Pele because I want to make sure that she doesn't get killed by Ixchel. I was concerned for no reason. She had that under control. Go for the Anubis here because, of course, Pele can probably take him out. Again, he's got 0 protection, so she's going to be able to just blast through whatever he does have, which you can see right here, right? Even I, with my just Gladiator's Shield, I'm doing plenty of damage to him. So absolutely smack him. Make sure that she's going to be safe. I actually stick around just to make sure she doesn't get ambushed by somebody because I know the other 3 are kicking around. Sylvanas is obviously in left, but I didn't know where Kali was very specifically. Jingwei calls attacking the Fire Giant, or somebody calls attacking the Fire Giant, which is fine, because we have the 4 here, right? Hell keeps... Now, at this point, Hell, of course, as you've probably noticed, Hell's just been sticking near me pretty much the whole time. She's switched from trying to deal damage to just being near me. From about halfway through the game, she's done this. Actually, from when we stole the Pyromancer a second time is when she started doing this, which is the correct move, right? She already knows that she's having a hard time dealing damage and that she can't escape, but as long as she sticks close to me, she's going to have much better odds of survival. She's going to be able to keep me alive. I'm going to be able to keep her alive. Marty ambushes me. I'm not sure why he ambushes me, because this is clearly not a favorable situation for him. He was, as far as I can tell, by himself. He didn't seem to have any allies nearby. Maybe he had one nearby who abandoned that fight, but again, we know Sylvanas isn't left, which is where Sylvanas should not be. And I don't understand why Marty went in on me like that. I don't understand why Sylvanas keeps going to the left lane. I have no idea. It's very odd. There's Anubis in mid. I don't think Anubis was ever in the jungle. There's a possibility, and I still think this. I still think Ixchel was in the jungle, in the right jungle, when Marty attacked me. But when Ixchel realized that 4 of us were in right jungle, she abandoned that fight, and Marty just basically was a sacrifice for her to get out secretly. Is what I think happened. So, yeah, again, Sylvanas keeps going to left lane despite the fact that he has no business being there. He's not sticking with his team because he's not defensive enough to be able to help them in the way they need. And, you know, at this point, we're just looking to push down this left tower because it's low. And I know that, I mean, I take a bunch of damage there, but Kali's out of the tower. She's going, again, by herself, going after... Who was that she was going after? I think it was Pele. Pele or Awilus that she was after. I think it was Pele. And, you know, we can just go in here. I'm taking a lot of damage, sure, but I also know that when I initiate, they're going to take just as much damage, and we're going to be able to turn this around. Hell immediately shows up to keep me, you know, put me back up in my health. And I know, you know what? I know I have Hell, so let's go for this. Pele goes in. All right, she can absorb a little bit of damage, and I die for this, but that's fine. Because even though I die for this, they used a bunch of ults. Pele died as well. And we get the Phoenix. We do get the Phoenix. Jingwei did do the correct thing and prioritize that. Wheels is going to die for this as well, obviously. But, again, we are able to take that Phoenix. Jingwei is able to get out in theory. I think she gets chased down to some extent. I can't remember if she sticks around long enough to get killed. I think she gets out. Yeah. So at this point, we've got a Phoenix down. We're looking to tie this up, right? We want to lock this down. We want to be finishing this game pretty soon. They have 2 Phoenixes, which isn't impossible to deal with. We could theoretically kill the Titan at this point if we can get a team wipe, right? So that's where I'm looking to. That's what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to clean this up. Stygian Beacon is charging. Okay, you know, we go Stygian Beacon, force a fight there, win the fight, kill the Titan. It's kind of mentally what I want to have happen. Sylvanas is right here by himself again. Keep in mind, by himself. The enemy team is in left lane, which is fair enough, right? There they are. Sylvanas rotates over, obviously, so I'm going to go in. I have my increased defense potion. And I am going to just absolutely wreak havoc, because I know that under the Phoenix, they're not going to win that fight. So the Sylvanas dies to Phoenix. Pele cleans up pretty much everyone else. And then all that's left is Marty. This was a huge win for us in terms of fights. This was absolutely massive. Absolutely massive. And again, this reflects mostly on the fact that Anubis and Sylvanas did not have protections, so they couldn't sustain that many shots from the Phoenix. They just couldn't last through. Right? So Jingwei is, you know, barreling down mid lanes. That'll take the Phoenix. You know what? Let's go for it. I get fully healed by Hell. I move forward to help Jingwei to be able to tank the Phoenix and all that. Off we go. Again, great readjustment of her playstyle by the Hell. The Hell really understands what she needed to do. It's absolutely great. We just go for the Titan at this point, because they're all coming up in 15 seconds, and even when they do show up, they're going to die really quick. Right? Kali ults out of desperation. She's just trying to buy time. It's not going to be enough. Right? We smack her down. I accidentally get that kill too. And we just clear the Titan really quick. Right? And again, you can see, again, I really want you to understand this. A lot of the enemy team's late game problems stemmed from, 1, their inability to rotate late game. The Hell has no reason to be sorry. She readjusted her playstyle so beautifully. Again, about halfway through the game, she just decided, I'm going to stick with Athena, and that was 100% the correct move. Keep me alive again in the face of all that extra damage. This also really was strongly pulled off because of... I'm going to talk about all the mistakes the enemy team made here, because there's quite a number of things going on here. All right, but first let me talk about my allies. Now, I already talked about my build when I made the adjustment, why I adjusted to the Amulet of the Stronghold, why I did that. You already know that, right? I got Amulet of the Stronghold because we were taking more than the usual magic damage. Anubis was not building support, he was building mage. Sylvanas was building damage for some unholy reason. You can even see his last item when you replace his recipe is Divine Ruin. It's not protections. He should have built, at the minimum, he should have built Contagion here, to be honest. Right? But anyways. Sorry, mild frustrations at some choices of the enemy teams. Bothers me a little bit. But anyways, the Jingwei, she's got the bit of a crit build here. She's splashed in some crit, but she's got that chin size. She's got, of course, the lifesteal. Very balanced build here. Now, the Jingwei is able to get away with this build because Jingwei has the increase in crits, obviously, from her second ability. I think it's her second ability, where she gets 15% crit on her widened arrows. This is a build that Jingwei can get away with that a lot of other hunters can't get away with because they don't have a crit chance boost built into their kits. So this is a great build for her. I will say that chin size was probably not necessary in this fight because the enemy team just didn't have protections. It is really interesting to note that she really didn't build much penetration. As a result of that, she recognized, and this is a shout out to really great awareness by Nevermind Game in here, recognized the enemy team had no defense, didn't bother with much penetration. I think there's 10% on Fail Not, and I think that's about it, right? Absolutely fantastic decision making, great build, respected the enemy team's mistakes, exploited them, did an absolutely great job, because crit builds do better against squishier comps, and normally this, at the surface, wouldn't be a squishier comp, but the Anubis' lack of protections and the Sylvanas' lack of protections allowed Jingwei to get away with a crit build that she should not have been able to get away with given the circumstances. To some extent, she still could have gotten away with it even if they had been building protections, because they only would have had the two tankier people, but still, the crits off of Jingwei were significantly harder hitting than they had any right to be against Sylvanas and Anubis, right? The build is fine. Totally fine. It's just that the Hell just had a really rough time with the Ixchel at the beginning and just really had a hard time recovering. But again, shout out to Chifa 4830. Midway through the match, just stuck with me, kept me alive, recognized, hey, there's all this damage. Let me keep Athena alive. Because even with a almost full protection, actually I did have a full protection build, even with a full tank build, I was still taking a lot of damage. You could see me taking a lot of damage. Because Sylvanas and Anubis were building all this damage, I was taking more damage than I normally would. But a Wheelish focusing so hard on healing me really, really kept me alive. Because again, the enemy team did not respect that healing. In the current meta, healing is widely regarded as not doing too well because of how incredibly effective anti-healing items are. I mean, Divine Ruin now has a miniature Odysseus bow effect on your abilities now, right? In addition to its anti-healing. Toxic Blade not only anti-heals, but decreases enemy attack speed, right? Brawler's Speed Stick just absolutely slaps. Right, anti-healing is really, really strong, and a lot of people are building anti-healing items for the damage, and the anti-healing is just kind of a fun side bonus. So healing usually isn't that great in this meta. It's simply due to the enemy's complete lack of concern for Hell's healing that only Sylvanas built anti-healing, and Hell was able to heal me through this bonus damage. Again, this is great decision making by Hell. This has nothing to do with her build, really. I wish she'd built Rod of Asclepius slightly earlier. I would have preferred it as a 5th item rather than her 6th, but that's a quibble. But you can see the point where she transitions out of, I'm trying to do magic damage to, let me stick with Athena. Right? Let me keep Athena alive, and I'll live longer because they won't be able to have as hard, they'll have a harder time killing me, and they'll have a harder time killing Athena. And it was just an absolute great shift in gameplay style, and that's hard to do, okay? Not all gods can do that, first off. Hell is one of the few that can. Ixchel can. Yemoja can, right? A lot of gods who have multiple different playstyles. Vaman can. He can go either auto-attack or ability-based, and you can switch between that depending on what your starter item is. It's not that many gods that can just switch their gameplay style completely in the middle of a match, and it's not a lot of people who can do it effectively, and it was a really great transition, really helped the team out a lot there. Great decision-making by the Hell. Okay, no, the Hell was not doing her damage, obviously, right? But that wasn't what Hell's priority was about halfway through the match. She switched to healing me, and it was exactly what we needed. It counteracted the bonus damage that the enemy team was doing because of their builds to me, and I was able to do my job because Hell was keeping me alive for the bulk of that, right? There were a couple of moments where I still died because she wasn't right there. That raid on the left Phoenix, you'll notice, she wasn't right there with me because I went in a little bit earlier than I think she was expecting. I don't think she was quite prepared for me to go that deep in, which partially was my fault, but the Pele was going in, so I went in with the Pele. That wasn't the Pele's fault either. The Pele just mistook my signal. That was mostly me mis-signaling by accident. Because I was looking for a good opportunity. She thought I was going in. I wasn't originally going to go in. She went in. I followed her in, right? That was nobody's fault in particular. I mis-signaled because I went forward like I was going to attack because I had my dash charged and I was moving forward, but then I decided against it and canceled it. Yeah, that was a mistake on my part. Because of the signal that I gave out to my allies, the Willish did a great job, really effectively used her movement. She rotated as best she could. You can actually see where in the early game she had some great rotations. She really helped the Pele out in the early game and the mid game. It was absolutely great. The Pele took a little too long to group up, I think. I mentioned that before. Great build, though. Absolutely fantastic build. Not sure about Manticore spikes, personally, but it's about the only item in her build that I raise an eyebrow at. I also think this probably should have been pure physical protections, to be really honest. This should have been something along the lines of, like, Contagion or something. Although she had, actually, if she'd built... no, she really didn't need Contagion. Could have been, a lot of different things, actually. Could have been Glad Shield. Could have been Berserker's Shield, even. Would have been great choices. That's my only real issue with Pele's build here. It's just, I don't think Manticore spikes, because the only thing that she has that triggers the spike is her pop-up from her shockwave, and that's it. Right, nothing else she has triggers that Manticore spike, so I would say just, some dedicated physical protections there probably would have been really good. The Collie played pretty well, it's just the Collie didn't have... And you can see various times where the Collie just absolutely succumbs to crowd control. There was a ton of times where you can see where Collie had her ult up. There's at least 2 moments in that match where Collie definitely had her ult up, but couldn't use it because she was being crowd controlled into oblivion. And that was because no one was there to save her. Right? Because Sylvanas couldn't eat the crowd control because it would just kill him. Same thing with Anubis. We've already talked about Sylvanas' build. We've already talked about Anubis' build, so I'm going to pass over those. Marty's build is fine. Totally fine. There's nothing seriously wrong here. It's just a totally normal Marty build. That's fine. Ixchel's build, pretty good. She built Divine Ruin as well. I just noticed she has Divine Ruin. One of only 2 people that respected the healing from Hell. But, again, with no frontline, as long as we could burst down Ixchel and Sylvanas fast enough, the anti-healing stopped happening, right? But just as a sort of summary, it's very important, even as early game as this meta is, it's still not such an early game meta that you can completely sacrifice your late game. While a strong early game will absolutely get the snowball rolling, you still need to keep in mind the late game. It's not like, I can't remember what season it was, I think it was season 5, might have been season 6, where games were ending so early no one got to full build. That meta was years ago. It might have been season 7 as well. There was one season, I can't quite remember, it was 5 through 7 somewhere, one of those seasons, where it was not unusual for Conquest games to end so fast nobody hit full build, right? If that was the kind of game this was, if the meta was that unbalanced, the Sylvanas would have been a genius, okay? And my personal theory is that Sleeping Teddy might have been a returning player from that era. Alright? is what I suspect. Okay? But at the end of the day, that doesn't change the fact that in the current meta, even though it is an early game dominant meta, there's still a late game. A late game still happens, and the way of building did not respect that and threw away his durability for damage. Alright? This is partially why Sylvanas kept trying to take Phoenixes by himself. He was looking to try to be damage for some reason. The Marty, yes, had a very difficult time, but that's not entirely Marty's fault, because as I pointed out earlier, Sylvanas was stealing a decent chunk of the golden experience away from Marty, never giving Marty the ability to capitalize on the great setups of Sylvanas in the early game, because the Sylvanas is doing really well in the early game, right? Setting things up, doing pretty good damage, getting Marty into some great situations, but because he wasn't building protections and because he stayed in left lane so long and kept returning to left lane when he wasn't needed there, Marty was not able to pull ahead of Jingwei in the way that he normally would be able to. So Sylvanas really shot Marty in the foot here. Now, Sylvanas only shot one of Marty's feet. Marty shot their other foot by themselves, right? It was a combination of the two factors, but Sylvanas stealing away so much golden experience from Marty unnecessarily really hurt Marty's ability to snowball into being able to compete with Jingwei, right? Really hurt that a lot. Again, another thing in our favor is Wheel Shinai's mobility, Jingwei's mobility as well, absolutely fantastic. We're really able to capitalize on that. Pele's mobility, while not superb, is still better than Anubis's as well, so she was able, once we started grouping up like we should have, she was able to be in a lot of places at once. She was able to wander around and slap a lot of people, which was great. But with that being said, it is really important to keep in mind the meta when you're looking to build, when you're looking to pick your character. Again, right now, ability-based gods are strong, and gods with mobility, or at minimum, the ability to contribute to fights they don't belong in, is big. This is why you see a lot of people playing Janus in mid lane. There's a lot of mid lane Janus right now. That's why. He hits hard, he's got a good early game, and he's very, very mobile, right? All absolutely great attributes in this meta. But a late game still happens. The meta isn't so early game that there is no late game. There is still a late game. Don't throw away your late game entirely in favor of a strong early game. If you want to sacrifice a little bit of your late game for a better early game, you can do that. That's fine. If you want to front load your damage and then build your protections in the back half, that's totally fine, right? As long as you're willing to play a little bit more cautiously in that early game, if you're willing to respect the enemy's damage that they're going to be doing to you in that time, that's fine. You have to make that adjustment. But to go whole hog damage like Sylvanas did here, or Anubis did, is going to hurt your team in the late game. And your early game lead is going to be thrown away, just like it was for the enemy team here. And there's just no getting around that. Alright, so with that being said, thank you all very much for listening, or for being here and watching. If you liked this, please like and subscribe. If you didn't, please ignore me. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, ideas, suggestions, or requests, please leave them down in the comment section below. And thank you all very much for joining me, and have a great 24 hours.